All right, good to see you this morning, and we've got some folks who've joined us. So it's good to have Brad here from Mercer. We're glad that you're here. And John T. Tremendous, terrific. He says too short. I don't think that's really true. But Brother Ferguson, we're glad he's here. And glad that y'all slept well. Who slept well? I just want to see. All right. Good, good, good. So stay awake. We're going to have a great time today. Yesterday, we got started, and we talked about two things. Number one, the role of a servant, the value of service, the priority of being a servant. Jesus said that he came not to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. So I don't know how you can be a Christian and not be a servant, because that's what his life was about. And then we talked about some of those requirements that make us effective. And we talked about the meaning and why it's important, and if it's missing, what it's going to cause, the hardship it's going to cause. And so we said, number one, you want to be a trusted lieutenant to your shepherds. And number two, you want to be a beacon. You want to let your light shine. You want to work on yourself so that you can be more useful. We're always asking, how can I be more useful? So today we're going to begin with talking about responsibilities. Okay, it's important. And I know the character and the qualities that I need to develop to increase my usefulness. But now we're going to talk about execution. Just practical stuff about getting work done in the kingdom. But I think it's really about getting work done anywhere. So I think it'll transfer to a lot of areas. Anybody recognize this scene? You should. It's from a movie. Does it look familiar? Okay, it's Petra, the rose-colored city in Jordan, so it's over in that area. And it comes from a famous movie, Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones, and there was a series of those. The reason I put that up there is because I think Indiana Jones kind of epitomizes what we're striving for here. You know, when the movie starts, he's got a problem, doesn't he? You know, he goes into this cave and he's got this sack of sand and he replaces it with some icon, and it doesn't work out. He has a problem. The funny thing is that when he solves the next problem, guess what's coming right behind it? Another problem. The whole movie, it's just one series of problems. You know what that sounds like to me? Life. Every day you get up, what do you have in common? There's a new set of problems. And we get a chance, particularly as people of faith, to take our faith, to take hope, and to take love, and then face these problems and meet the demands of life. So that's kind of how it works. So I think of them kind of like waves of the sea. You got one coming, one may be going away, but there's another one coming behind it. So it's not unusual to have problems. In fact, I call problems providence in disguise. Because a lot of times, things that would happen, if you look at the history of the church or God's people throughout the Old Testament, some of the things were actually in preparation for good things that were going to come. You think about Joseph being sold by his brothers. Terrible thing. But what they intended for evil, God intended for good. And so what we know is all things work together for good to those who love God and are called according to his purpose. When the church was persecuted, that's all bad. Well, wait a minute. If they didn't get uncomfortable, they wouldn't have gone everywhere preaching the word. And you and I wouldn't be here without their evangelistic fervor, carrying the gospel. So when you have a problem, sometimes it's providence in disguise. God has something in mind, and you don't know where it all is leading. So it puts you at the door of new opportunities. Now you can tell a person who's not a leader, because when they have a problem, they're going to fret and they're going to complain as if this is something strange. Problems. Well, problems aren't strange. Instead, we need to have, what did Indiana Jones have? When he had a problem, did he kind of just plop down on the ground, put his face in his hands, and just weep uncontrollably and say, why me? Why me? That's not what he did. He just faced it and addressed it. And what we need, instead of complaining, instead of resentment, is that we need to have a creative mind and a determined heart. You have to have a creative mind, because whatever you were thinking wasn't working because you got into this situation. So I've got to think something different than I was thinking. I need to think outside the box, not outside the Bible, but outside the box. And then I need a determined heart, because it doesn't matter what it is. Have you noticed you've overcome a lot of problems in your lifetime? Here you are. Every one of them, either you solved it or you have learned how to deal with it. And we can trust that God will continue to go with us, and that we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. Absolutely. Amen. Now, does that mean Aubrey's going to play NBA basketball tomorrow? No. What does it mean? It means that you can meet the demands of life. And so it's not talking about you'll be able to play violin when you come up from the waters of baptism. You'll be able to speak foreign language. No, that's not what it's talking about. What it's talking about is that as a Christian, we believe that when we look to God, that He's going to provide what we need to deal with life and for us to be successful. So, we want to think about problems, not creating just anxiety and frustration, but get excited. Because a problem is an unmet human need. You get to address a need. When there's a problem, you get to help. You get to bless. You get to solve. And that means that it's a good thing in the end. I say they're certified problem solvers. Deacons are certified problem solvers. And the reason I say that is because some sweet little lady in the congregation says, I think you'd make a good deacon. You've been member certified. The elders then have to consider whether you meet the qualifications. You're elder certified. You're Holy Spirit certified, because we talked about those qualifications. And did you notice that those qualifications that we looked at yesterday, that they increase your problem-solving proficiency? To the extent that you have them, you are ready, you are equipped to deal with the kinds of issues, the matters that come up in doing the work of God in the kingdom. So, certified problem solvers. And if we talk about execution, we're going to talk about four things. I am a simple person, not complex at all. I grew up kind of farming and construction, and that's who I am. So I'm just a practical guy. So we're going to talk about getting clear. Is that important to execution? Getting going. That's nice. Getting some help. And getting results. To me, it's kind of like if your pickup truck is not running and you're on the side of the road and you throw up the hood. Probably is 4 or 5 things that are going on. It could be something unusual, but most of the time, it's just a handful of things. And so if you're stuck and you're not getting consistent progress in your ministry, I think it's probably, in all likelihood, it's one of these four things. And you can just look at it and ask yourself, okay, what do I need to be doing that I haven't been doing? So that's what we're going to do. Y'all help me out here. Let's repeat these just so that we can let them go a little deeper. Number one, we're going to get clear. Number two, we're going to get going. Number three, we're going to get some help. And then finally, we're going to get some results. Amen. So we're going to get some clarity. We're going to get some initiative. We're going to get some help. We're going to get some accountability, and we'll move forward. In the Old Testament, one of the most memorable verses that deal with execution is from Solomon in Proverbs chapter 6, verses 6 through 8. Go to the ant, O sluggard. So Solomon has, he's kind of being funny, isn't he? He says if you had an ant-sized brain, you could get a lot more done. I mean, this insect surpasses the activity and the mental acuity of a lot of people. Go to the ant, O sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise. Without having anybody tell him what to do, any chief officer or ruler, bossing, prodding, pushing, petting, without that, she prepares her bread in summer and gathers her food in harvest. An ant is active. You get in front of an ant and you say, no, you can't come any further. What's an ant going to do when you put an obstacle in front of an ant? They're going to go around it. They're going to go over it. They're going to go under it. But what they're not going to do is say, oh, well, there's a twig. I think I might as well turn around and go back home. That's not an ant mentality. And they're always getting ready, it says, for harvest. Prepares her bread in the summer, gathers her food in the harvest. Always getting ready for the winter. All right, let's talk about the first of these. We want to get clear. How do you get clear? You ask questions. So questions are like tools. So if you're going to work in the yard, you got tools. What kind of tools do you have to work in the yard? Might have a rake, somebody said. Shovel. Got a mower, trimmer. You got a lot of different things you can use. And the questions are just tools, aren't they? Mentally, they break up the clods of assumptions, and they help us to spade and to get clear as we think about what we need to do. So I said you weren't going to learn a lot of new stuff, probably be more encouraged than having brand new information. So what kind of questions can you ask? You got a tool belt, okay? Did you come with your tool belt today? We're going to put some questions in our tool belts so that we can carry them with us and use them at appropriate times. So what's a good question for a leader to put in their tool belt? There's really about 5 or 6 that are the most common and useful. There you go. So let's all go home. We're done. We're done now. That's it. Now, I'm not saying that's the limit of the questions, but isn't that really how you get stuff done? So, what is it? The goal. You need a goal. The why. You need a motive. If you have a good enough why, you can do almost anything. You need a win, kind of schedule, a target. You need a how. You need a plan. And you need a who. That is an assignment. If you get in a meeting and everybody talks and there's this grandiose plan, and you get out of that meeting and you don't have a who, what do you have? You've got nothing. So whose job is it to make sure you get a who? It's everybody's job. Everybody's job. So, okay, but who's going to do it? I always like to have the directly responsible individual and an accountability partner. The accountability partner doesn't have to do the job, but it's their job just to kind of encourage and make sure things are moving along, that they're tracking. How's it going? Is it tracking? But one directly responsible individual. So I think that's kind of how we need to operate. So let's think about this. If I'm trying to get from point A to point B, we have a goal and we have a path to get there. We need a desirable destination. If we have a desirable destination, are we more likely to get progress and results? But I need a pleasing path to get there. So that's a part of the process. Probably also need a sensible schedule. If I have a desirable destination, a pleasing path, and a sensible schedule, I'm more likely to get stuff done. So it's really simple. You know, you can add some other components like a smart start and practical provisions and an awesome attitude. There's other things you can add to the list, but that's basically it. So if I'm having VBS, that is a desirable destination. Encouraging kids. I need a pleasing path. I've got to plan that thing out. And there are milestones. If you're going to have VBS, for instance, what's got to happen along the way? Tell me some things that you're going to have to do to have VBS. What's our theme? We got to have a theme. Is it better to get the theme near the start or at the end? Let's all get fired up, and a week before we'll unveil the theme. So there's also a sequential and a logical sequencing. So we look at the components. We've got these different components, and it makes sense to kind of schedule them in a certain way to make it more effective. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it just kind of common sense. I need a theme. What else do I need? Okay, I may have divisions and people in charge of different parts. What kind of parts do you have? What are other things that have to get done for VBS? Snacks. Crafts. We've got to have teachers. So you can start to see this path, can't you? This is true of any project. This is true of, you start thinking about the chunks, the big pieces that are going to have to happen. And so if you're a teacher, would you rather be asked early at the beginning, or would you rather be asked later? You know, some people like to fly by the seat of their pants. I just don't like to travel with them. That's okay. You do that if you enjoy that. If you ask people early, I think you can also find people are more likely to say yes because you don't have the stress, and they may not do anything until the month before, but they're just more comfortable with it. So we ask early. Well, there's a lot of pieces. Room decorator, you know, you can go on and on. Look, guides to take from one section to another, different things. But you can line that up. And you know probably there are certain areas that are going to be more problematic than others. What might be the most difficult thing in VBS? Find the teachers. And so I need to give some special attention to that and think about possibilities. And you know, there's a lot of different ways to have VBS. You can have everybody show up and do everything every night, or you could have one teaching center, one where they're acting out that biblical story, and then they're only dedicated one night, and you're running everybody through it, so it doesn't require them to be tied up all the time. There's a lot of different ways to do it, like folding a towel. There's a lot of different ways to fold a towel. So we have to be creative And we've got to ask questions. Well, has anybody ever done VBS here before? I might want to know who that is. Does anybody do VBS in other congregations? I could ask them for some advice. Well, what was your theme? You know, getting a theme, it's kind of interesting. We think we always have to have the perfect theme. Perfect is a figment of the imagination. It doesn't exist. This is just a preference. There's a lot of things. What could you do VBS on? Well, you could do it on Daniel and the stories from the book of Daniel. You could do it on the journeys of Paul, the missionary journeys. You can do it on the life of Christ, the miracles of Christ, the parables of Christ. I mean, there's no limit to what you could do. But we can ask questions, and that's going to help us get started. What's the budget? Is that a good question? How do I access the money for the budget? Am I supposed to bring receipts? Do I get a credit card? It doesn't matter what it is. I just need to know what it is, and I need to work in cooperation with whatever it is. When would you like me to report to you? When would you like an update? How do you like me to communicate? You like text? No. Email? No. Okay, what would you like? How often should we get together and talk? So the more questions that you ask, it just makes things flow better. But I do believe this idea of what, getting really clear. Like, for instance, you're in charge of grounds. What does grounds mean? What does that mean? Does that mean I run the mower? Is that grounds? Well, okay. And is once a month good enough? You think, we just keep it below waist high? That's good. What does it mean? Could it involve edging? Could it involve trimming the bushes? Grounds, well, that might include the parking lot. And striping, that could include the sign. That could include a lot of things that are on the exterior of the building. And you think, well, I cut the grass, what do you want? Well, there might be more involved. So if we get more clarity, where do we get in trouble? Assumptions. Where does failure come from? Assumptions. I thought I understood, but I didn't. What they wanted. You can't please everybody in the church. Have you figured that out? You can't please everybody, but maybe the person who gave you the assignment, if you find out from them, what is it you want? Describe it graphically. Give me some more detail. That's going to make it easier for you to be successful. What is your timeline? How do you want me to report? But who, what, when, where, how? Brother Phil has helped us to understand that. Another thing that's important is managing expectations. Expectations. Let's say that we're putting up a new bulletin board with the elders and the deacons and the preachers, so when people come in, they can see it. And we assign that. And so Vince gets an assignment here. Vince says, okay. And it's going to take exactly 3 months to do it. 3 months. But Vince is a guy, and guys are idealistic. We think we can do everything in a snap, quick and easy. So he says, you know what, I can do that in 2 months. Well, it actually took, what did we say? It took 3. But he says 2. And then Brad comes along, and another congregation, he gets the same request. And he says, you know what? I think I could do that in 2 months, but I've been around the block. And one thing I figured out is that these projects take longer than I think they're going to take. They usually cost more, and they take more time. So you know what? If I think I can do it in 2 months, if I multiply that by 2, if I'll double that, I'm probably going to hit closer to reality. And we said it took how long? 3. You got one man who said 2. What are people saying when 2 months have gone by and it's not done? Board's not there. 2 months in a week, it's not there. Next Sunday, it's not there. What are people saying? What do people say? It's no good. Well, he's a good guy, but he's kind of lazy. Well, he can't really pull things. People talk, don't they? People do that. On the other hand, here's Brad. Amazing Brad. Now, it took the exact same amount of time, but it had to do with the expectations that we create. And somebody mentioned this last night. When you make promises, Charles, was this you, and you don't fulfill those, you can complicate other people's schedules. People can get embarrassed. You can have all kinds of things come up. But you get done a month early. What are people saying about Brad? Wow, he's on fire. He's amazing. Same amount of time. Exact same amount of time. So we have a saying for that. You know what it is. We ought to under promise and over deliver. Okay? Under promise, over deliver. You're in charge of expectations. So instead of trying to impress people with rosy promises on the front end, why not impress them with your performance on the back end? Because here's what we know. It's not often that all your ducks line up in a row. It's not often that every traffic light turns green. Well, I made it one time in 5 minutes, but rarely happens. All the stars seldom line up in the heavens for you. Now, when you start putting in this buffer, I think it's going to help in just the functioning of things, but people are going to be grateful. Who's going to be grateful? Your cardiologist will be grateful because you're going to be under less stress and you're going to get a good report on your blood pressure. Your spouse is going to thank you because you're not as grumpy. Because when you get under pressure because you overpromised, who pays the price? Well, you get a little snappy, you get a little irritable, and somebody else is paying the price for that. So instead, we're going to manage those expectations, and we're going to leave some breathing room. We're going to have what do we say? We have a desirable destination, a pleasing path, and a sensible schedule. Make it enjoyable. There's times you have to push through and do things in a hurry, but as a normal course of doing business in the church, make it sensible, livable, sustainable, and everybody will have a better time. Another thing on getting clear is documenting agreements. And sometimes we say, well, where's my job description? Well, now, if you get one, good for you. But elders have so many things to do, they can't do everything they would like to do for members in the congregation. But you know what? You've been asked to help them. Look at it that way. You've been asked to help them. So what would help them? Would it help them if you had a job, if you came up with a job description and said, is this kind of what you're looking for? How can I tweak this? How can I adjust this? And then that gives you something to work from. But I think documenting it, clarity, no assumptions. Get rid of the ambiguity. Get rid of just the muck. Get rid of that, the undergrowth. Get it clear. A lot of times dissatisfaction, for instance, elders having a meeting with someone. Hey, well, let's get together and talk about that. Okay. Then the member gets upset because they thought that it was going to come up at the next meeting. Well, the next meeting's agenda was all filled, so the elders were thinking we'll do that next month. Well, the member is assuming you lied to me. You said you were going to get back to me. Was that not a lie? There's no lie. There's no intent to deceive or to harm. It's just a lack of clarity. That's all it is. So when we specify things like who's accountable, who's assigned, when are we going to report, when are we going to get together, all of that is going to help. It's going to help us move forward. Next thing we've got to do after we get this clarity by asking lots of questions is we got to get going. Got to get out of the gate. And that's often a problem. How do you do that? You need a plan. You think sometimes we plan too much? Can we overcomplicate some things? Nehemiah, they're going to rebuild the walls around Jerusalem. He say, okay, I think we need to appoint a committee, and we're going to take a year, and we're going to investigate wall building and costs. Do you remember how long he took to get his plan together? He took a night tour, it says. It says he took a night tour. He walked around. He did have a plan. Looks to me like you live here, you could work on this part. You live over here, you'll work on this part. It was a simple, practical plan. Now, if it's some gigantic project, you'll plan more. If it's a small project, you'll plan less. But, or it's like if you have a 747, you need a big runway. If you have a little Piper Cub, you need a little runway. But plan up front. Do a little planning, and it will bless you. Create a timeline. Leaders live their lives backwards. That's how they live. That's how they think. I don't know how limber you are to go backwards, but living your life backwards. You know, we already talked about it, VBS. Or think anniversaries. How about this? Rick, anniversaries. June 4th is my anniversary. What's your anniversary? Okay. Now, if I take my phone out and I put in there anniversary June the 4th, default alarm on an iPhone maybe is 1 hour. So on June the 4th, maybe in the afternoon, about 3 o'clock, it goes off. Well, that's a lot of help. You know, I've got to pull a rabbit out of a hat and try to make a memorable anniversary. I'll probably make it as far as Walgreens or Walmart, and I'll try to make something memorable. Will it be memorable? Maybe not in the way that I intended, but yeah, it'll probably be memorable. Who gets to answer the question? That's right. So instead of, I think really you almost have two calendars, and I don't mean they're separate, but there is an event calendar, there's a planning calendar. So let's go back to VBS. If one of the first things I need to do is have an organizational meeting, when should that be on my calendar? What do you think? The day after, we can do a little, oh, by the way, you did a great job. You want to go ahead and sign up for next year? That's possible. Sometimes we have a post-mortem, a post-event evaluation, saying what went well, what didn't, and you could ask even then, are you on board? But typically, you know, if you're going to have it in June, sometime early January, February, March, you're wanting to get people together, to create a timeline. Anniversary, June the 4th. I've got a 50th anniversary coming up. It's not next year, but it's the next year. Got a lot of things to plan for the big golden anniversary. So when should I start putting something in there about my June 4th anniversary? Well, probably not the week before, probably not the month before. I need to back it up. And what could I put into my calendar? Instead of putting anniversary, that's kind of vague, isn't it? what could I put in my calendar instead? What text, what line could I put in there? 50th anniversary, that elevates the importance. That's like putting it in red, a red flag. Sometimes you can color code them. What kinds of things will I have to do to get ready for my 50th anniversary? Reservations. I got to start researching bed and breakfast. I hear they have a castle in Versailles that is just perfect for, some special event. So you start researching, and that might be dinner reservations, it might be flowers, it might be, did I get a gift? Did I get a card? One anniversary, I think it was our 25th anniversary, we got the same card for each other. It was really interesting. But if I have on my calendar an action, will that help me move into action mode instead of just anniversary? Well, what does that mean? I mean, I have to stop and try to get clear. Instead, I have an assignment. I have something to do. VBS, something to do. Organizational meeting. Teachers. Guides. Curriculum. Room decorations. Snacks. Crafts. And I can then move in an orderly and timely way to get some things done. So it doesn't sneak up on me. It doesn't sneak up on me. Planning calendar, not just events, planning, timely planning. Next, you need to seek some accountability. Somebody read for me Proverbs chapter 12 and verse 1. Proverbs chapter 12 and verse 1.
Whoever loves discipline.
What was that last word? Stupid? You're telling me that's in the Bible? That's incredible, isn't it? If you don't like feedback, you're stupid. You need to welcome feedback. Not just tolerate feedback, you need to seek feedback. You need to embrace feedback. Because only good things can happen, really, because one is you're going to learn and the other one is you're going to shine. If they say you're doing a great job, well, that's nice. And if not, you're going to find out you're off track and you can address it. Those are win-wins in both cases. But when I don't want accountability, what is that a sign of? Insecurity. It's a sign of immaturity. The healthier I am, I say, okay, I don't have to say because there's something that could be changed, that makes me a terrible person. You know, when we're like that, do people want to give us any accountability? Does your wife want to tell you what she thinks if she was punished last time? And she has this lingering feeling from, what happened? Said, no, I'm not going to tell you next time. No way, no way. If instead we can say, thank you. What do you need to say when somebody brings you some advice? Maybe it's off base, maybe it even wasn't well intended, but what can you say? Thank you. Your enemies, by the way, will tell you things your friends won't tell you. Sometimes they'll be more honest with you because your friends don't want to hurt your feelings and your enemies are going to tell you the way they see it. Maybe they're overcritical, but in any case, it helps you to see what people are thinking. Just say thank you. Does that mean you have to do it? No, it doesn't mean you have to do it, but it means you can think about it. I think you always should think about it if there's something there. If you've prayed about it and thought about it, if there's something there, okay, let's make a change. Where can we get some accountability in our ministries? Number one, this is the voice of experience here. I tell you what, your wife can help you, your spouse can help you, and it really encouraged them to shoot straight with you. I don't have any problem with that. My wife, she's going to tell me what she thinks, and that's a good thing. Spouses, That's good. It's good. What else? Who else can we get accountability from? Christian brothers, any in particular? Could be other deacons. Could be members of your team. Oh, did you have a team? If you have a team, if you made a team. Could be the elder who gave you the assignment. Could be that accountability partner that we talked about. But get some accountability. If you've got, if you're supposed to have a VBS meeting in January and you've got a team and it's February, they're going to come up and say, I thought we were going to have a meeting. Oh, thank you. Let's get going. Let's get that on the schedule. Seek accountability. Weight Watchers, accountability. Workout camps, accountability. Get a partner, get going. Now, the fourth thing on the list is to ask a question. This is worth the price of the seminar, okay? What is the next faithful step? Because sometimes we get overwhelmed when we try to contemplate the whole project. I remember in school, I'd get behind a little bit in college, and I felt like, I might as well go home. No way I can get through this. But I had a professor he sat me down, he said, bring your book, sit down, okay, what's the next thing that's due? It's a book report, okay, get to work, we'll talk in a few minutes, you go ahead and get started. Well, bam, I could knock that out, and what's the next thing that's due? Well, I got this test coming, okay. I was needing somebody to help me see the simple process. What is the next step? When you ask what the next step is, if you're in the planning phase, you think big. You get this great pool of options and opportunities. When you're talking execution, you think small. What's the next step? I don't have to see the top of the staircase to get there. I just have to see the next step. You know what? If I take the next step, I'll end up at the top of the staircase. I don't have to see beyond the next curve if I'm driving. I just have to see far enough to keep the car on the road. Here's some things you get. Mental relief. Whew. I need a VBS organizational meeting. I can do that. You get some mental relief. It's doable. You also get some manageable pieces. It's starting to fall into place. And you get some momentum because when you say, okay, I need to have a meeting. By the way, if you think we put off meetings sometimes because we say, well, I've got to have all the ideas, I've got to have all the plans. You know what I've discovered? You get people in a room, they got perfectly good brains, and magic happens. It's just like almost magic. Everybody plays off each other, and it flows. It cascades. You start thinking about that planning meeting, though, just getting people in a room together, VBS, what are we going to do? You start thinking about who needs to be in the meeting. Well, what's their phone number? Well, what might be a good question that we need to address? The theme. It just happens. It just happens. But you have to take a step. You have to overcome inertia. One of the biggest problems in ministry and in life with anything is overcoming inertia. You got to get that body in motion. And what I have discovered is that the smallest exertion shifts you into action mode and allows you to access parts of your brain you otherwise can't get to. Because when you look at the whole project, you feel overwhelmed. You get flooded emotionally. But when you think that one thing, mental relief, manageable pieces, momentum, you're able to get out of the gate. So in other words, here's what I'm saying. You have executive abilities. What is that? The ability to execute, to make a decision, to set a goal, to have a timetable, to make a path. But when you're flooded emotionally, that part of your brain, it's like it's been locked up. You can't access that part. But once you ask what's the next faithful step, it's like you can go in and it just starts flowing for you. I'll tell you something else I think that happens when you ask what's the next step. I believe that heaven will rally around you. That there are times when we're praying, God, you got to help me with this. God, you got to help me with this. And maybe I can't say I know exactly what's going on in the mind of God, but I just wonder if there's not something like this. Well, Aubrey, if you would do something, I would help you. You've got to do something. Get started. Take action. But I believe it just sets in motion this process, and all kinds of things will happen. Paul has to set out on that journey. He's going to run into some roadblocks, but he's got to get started. You take the step and see where it all unfolds. Now, if you're still not going, buy a book. The book is going to be on procrastination. You can get one at Amazon.com. You can get one at Barnes & Noble or Books A Million. Of course, there's a problem here. I'm already behind. Now I've got to pick out a book. Well, there's 100 books on procrastination. What am I going to do? That was meant to be funny. I don't know if it's funny or not. But the point is, there comes a point. If I've got a plan and I've got a timeline and an accountability and I know what the next step is and I'm still not going, again, what is the problem? It's not the difficulty. It's probably a little bit the insecurity. I'm a people pleaser. I want everybody to be happy. So before we paint the fellowship hall, I just want to be sure everybody's going to be happy before I make a decision. Well, you know what? If you paint it green, the blue people aren't going to like you. And if you paint it blue, the beige people aren't. It's just a choice. In fact, I want you to practice with me. You got to kind of shake it off for a minute here and say, it's just a choice. Okay, here we go. It's just a choice. So if you're going to be a dynamic deacon, a dynamic servant, you also have to be a decisive deacon. You've got to make some choices along the way. We're going to put a new large screen, 80-inch TV in the fellowship hall so people who are older like me can see the screen, okay? We're going to put it in there. And we're going to ask Frank, you're the treasurer, so you take care of this. Get us a new TV for our fellowship hall. Is he going to appoint a committee and study it for a year or for 6 months? And every month there's a new TV out. And this one has more HDMI connections. And this one has a higher refresh rate. And this one is LED or mini LED or OLED. And you can sit there and debate that and fret about that forever. Or you can just get a TV. If you don't make timely decisions, the church will never get momentum. It will never get momentum because everything gets done, but it's so slow, so hard, so painful that you never get the momentum to move forward. We got to make timely decisions. Don't be irresponsible. Get some bids. But you can go to Amazon or Best Buy and look at a few different things. Okay, what do I want? I want, at least 120 refresh rate, and I want a couple of HDMI, and let's go. Okay, let's go. Buy a book. By the way, if you're a procrastinator, does that make you a terrible person? No. Will it hold you back from reaching your potential? It will. So what do you got to do? You got to face it. I got to look in the mirror and say, Aubrey, you got a procrastination problem. And it could be perfectionism. And it could be plain old laziness. I don't know what it is. But I just got to face it and say, you know what? I'm going to deal with this. So what I've got to practice is pulling the trigger. I got to get comfortable. It's just a decision. Make a decision. Most of the decisions I've made in my life were wrong. But I tried to make them right. I think that's often the case, that I can make an adjustment and try to make the thing work. So there are adjustments. Here's the way that leaders live their lives. You make a decision. No decision is not an option. You make a decision, you monitor, and you adjust. You monitor, and you adjust. So, you're going to get criticized. That's why we don't want to make the decision. Action produces friction. Or they call it the whale principle. If the whale sticks his head up, somebody's going to throw a harpoon. Somebody's going to throw a criticism. But, we did Daniel 4 years ago, so it should have been, some. People are going to criticize. If you're going to say, if people criticize, well, they can just have this job, you might as well not start. Buddy, I want to tell you, because that's what people do. And you just have to understand this is a part of leadership. Did they criticize Moses once or twice? Did they criticize Jesus? He's perfect and sinless. What about you? You think you're going to come up with a perfect plan and you're going to have 100% concurrence? It's just not going to happen. And there aren't any perfect plans except God's plan of redemption or his plan for the church. But on the human side, there's not a perfect. So you pull the trigger. So you're at halftime. And you're Kentucky. And Alabama's leading. Can't imagine that happening. So what do? You might want to adjust your game plan. You might want to change some things up. You're a pilot and you're flying and you're off course. You might want to adjust your flight plan. You're a general. The colonel comes and says, "Sir, we've been flanked." Yeah, but I like the symmetry of this. We drew this up so pretty. Let's just stick with it. Well, that would be nuts, wouldn't it? You're going to adjust your battle plan. And so that's the way all leaders live their lives. It's not that they make better decisions every time. It's that they make decision velocity. They make decisions fast enough and then make some adjustments along the way to get traction and momentum towards goals. I want to be in that city and I need to take off. And if I'm off course, I just need to make a correction, but I'll get there better than just sitting around and waiting. All right, does that help? We've got to take action. We've got to get going. A little plan, a timeline, accountability, crucial. What's the next step? That's worth the price of the seminar. And deal with procrastination. Just start saying, it's a decision. Make them and move on. The next thing is we got to get some help. How do teams benefit in getting the work of the Lord done? Did God work through teams? This isn't just Harvard Business Review, is it? Did God work with teams? Tribes of Israel, apostles, Jesus sent them out 2 by 2. He even created man and woman in the Garden of Eden. Let's make a little team here. Lots of examples of team. But what do we get from teams? When we have a team, what are some benefits? I get support. I get ideas. I get perspective. I get some energy. Many hands make light work. I don't like to do it all myself, okay? What does that person on my team get? Do they get anything? Sense of belonging, contribution, fulfillment, because they were created in Christ Jesus unto good works. It's the reason they exist. You're not imposing on them. You are blessing them. So yeah, they get something. Do elders get anything when you work through a team rather than as the Lone Ranger? And Lone Ranger had Tonto, didn't he? Okay, so he wasn't so lone after all. But what do elders get? More workers, different skill sets. There's a lot of benefits for the elders, because what happens if you get sick? That ever happen? Suddenly you've taken ill, you're in charge of VBS. Who you got on your team? We're just going to not have VBS this year? That could be if you don't have a team. It could be that your work moves you. Could have an accident. Could get promoted into the eldership. Now what are they going to do? We've got all chiefs, no Indians here. We need team. And I tell you this, who is in the danger zone in any congregation? People who aren't involved. So if you're taking somebody out of the danger zone, getting them connected, and they're getting belonging, and they're working, are you blessing the elders? Absolutely. So it's win, win, win. I think the first thing you've got to do is recruit one-on-one. Had a guy in one congregation, he got put in charge of grounds. He came to me 1 month later and he said, Aubrey Johnson, this is the laziest congregation on the face of the earth. I thought, well, what's happened over the last month? He put a sign-up list on the board and everybody didn't just flock to it. Well, how does it really happen? A lot of it's one-on-one. A lot of it's, by the way, yeah, I'm going to help you with this. Would you help me with that? But it's about a personal relationship. You can have PowerPoint slides, and you can have bulletin announcements and pulpit announcements and bulletin boards, and I do all of that. But in the end, here's how leadership works. Hey, Ricky, I got something going on, and I need you, brother. And you make an appeal. You got to practice that appeal. It's too important just to shoot from the hip, so that you can say it with passion. You ought to be excited, don't you think? How's anybody else going to be excited if you're the leader and you're not excited? You need to touch their hearts. I remember a guy in Oklahoma City. I was at Affirming the Faith. They had a little lectureship over there, and I was talking to some guys, and I said, well, tell me what you do. And there was one brother who, when I asked him that, he looked down. And he kind of shuffled his feet, and he said, well, I don't do anything, I just greet. He's in charge of greeting in his congregation. Who thinks that's nothing? Does anybody here think that's nothing? I don't do anything. Is that like hugely important? Every good thing that happens to people when they come in begins with, hello, good to see you, glad you're here. The Bible says greet one another with a holy kiss. Well, you know, that can go for a hug or a handshake too, I guess. But when the Bible commands that, does the Bible command that? Greet? It's a biblical imperative. It must be important. Baptism is important. Greeting is important. Souls are touching. And lives are going to be changing. And it all commences there. I began to talk to him a little bit about why I thought this is amazing and it's important work. Have you ever taken a plant and it was drooping and you put it under the faucet, gave it a little water and set it in the window and come back an hour later and what? You know, it just straightens up. Have you ever seen a person do that with encouragement? So you touch their hearts. You talk about why that ministry is important, how it's going to affect people, bless lives, help to grow the church, and compliment their gifts. Sometimes when we're recruiting, we go up to somebody, we're shaking hands, and while we're shaking hands, we're going like this. you'll do. And if you're not good at that, you can take a mirror. If you'll hold it under the nose, you can check for respiration. There'll be some condensation there. Because if they're live, they'll do. It's like you go up and say, hey, I'm at the bottom of the barrel. Will you help me? End of my rope, bottom of the barrel. I have discovered, and I really believe this, that when you tell people why you came to them, why you thought of them, it makes a difference. They have people skills, they have technical knowledge, they have resilience, whatever it is. Wanted you for the 9th grade boys Bible class. I know you love the book of Acts. I see the kids, they kind of glow when they get around you. You tell people why, and they're more likely to join in. And if you're asking for a real commitment, not moving somebody over the weekend, but teach a class for the next year, choose your setting. Because they're making if you want a real commitment, have a real conversation. They need to be able to make a commitment to you. So you can go to the coffee house or a pancake house. That's my preference. We can go to your house. But let's sit down and talk about it and have a serious conversation and get a serious commitment. I think we need a break. We're going to stop and have a break and come back in here. We'll finish up this and move on to our next session. Remember, what are we aiming for? We said yesterday we had a goal. What are we aiming for? 5% more zeal, so I'm hoping that we're almost at 3%. If not, that we're getting close. Not a lot of new information, but maybe some motivation. Enjoy the break. We'll be back together in about 10 minutes.